Welcome to Chapter 8. We're going to learn a lot of statistics, and we will be looking at examples, at graphs, and we will do a lot of statistics to help us be able to make conclusions about data that's been collected. We'll start off by just talking about collecting data, and we have some terminology to learn first, and then we'll get into some examples. The population is all the animals, the people, or the objects that you are hoping to be able to make conclusions about. And an example would be all New Mexico children. So I might want to do a study so that I could make some conclusions about, say, the average height of a child in New Mexico. And then my population would be all New Mexico children. A sample then is a subset of the population, and if you're thinking about all the New Mexico children, then you can't talk to every single New Mexico child, so you might pick a subset of that population, and we call that a sample, and talk to those people in the sample to try to collect your information. And here's our example: 45 randomly selected children in New Mexico. And we really want our sample to be representative of our population, and we'll talk about that more soon. Data, then, is information collected from your sample, and some examples are weight, height, eye color, age, and so on. You can think of almost anything that you could get information from a person or an object or an animal, and that would be considered data. Why not just talk to everybody in the population and not worry about having to take a subset of those people to get information from? That would be a census, and a census is a type of sampling where data is collected from every member of the population, and it sounds really great. The only problem is that often the population is so big or so difficult to locate, or sometimes just contrary, and you can't get the information from them. And the larger the population is, the more it costs you to get information from all of the members of the population. So again, very difficult to do, and it can be very costly. So we have other methods that we can use instead of a census. A census is the best, but again, it's often very, very difficult. And if we can't do a census, then we want to switch to one of the other types of sampling and try to make sure it's representative so that the data that we do collect represents our population. A parameter is data that we have about a population. For instance, we might know the height of all New Mexico children. We might. It's difficult to get, but we might know that. And that would be our goal, something that we're shooting for, that we want to know, and it's about our population. So we might be interested in what's the average height of all New Mexico children age 8, for example, and we might want to find out by taking a sample. A statistic is data that we collect from a sample. So we use that data. It's not from the entire population, but it's from a subset of the population called a sample, and we use that data to make conclusions or to guess what a population parameter is. And so our goal is to be able to tell us something about our population. For instance, we want to know the height of New Mexico 8-year-olds. We'll change that slightly. So for example, our parameter, or the data that we're interested in for our population, is the height of New Mexico 8-year-olds. That's our goal. And to get to our goal, to find out what that height is for all New Mexico children, we would create a sample, talk to or measure the height of each of the children in our sample, and then use that information, which we call a statistic, which is the data that we collect from the sample. We use that to estimate the population parameter, which was the height of the New Mexico 8-year-olds. So we will still collect information from 8-year-olds in New Mexico, but just not every single one of them. We'll use that smaller group or that subset or that sample to give us the information that we can then estimate for the parameter for the population. So I do want you to notice that there's some alliteration going on here. If you're an English person, you know that means the sounds are the same. And we have population parameter. They both start with a P. And then we have sample statistic. And those both start with an S. So the P ones go together, population parameter and sample statistic. Okay. And they both are data from their respective group of people. So what we'd like to do now is try out these definitions on some actual scenarios. I gave you some examples as we're working, but let's try these out and see if we can identify the population, the sample, the results, and whether the results are a sample statistic or a population parameter. Number one, a headline about the rising obesity among young people led a school board to survey local high school students. Out of the 231 students surveyed, 58% reported eating a high-fat snack at least 4 times a week. Well, the population is the large group, and it usually starts with the word all. So we're looking, who is it we are trying to make conclusions about? And this would be all local high school students, because there was a headline about obesity, and then the school board decided they were going to survey local high school students. So they're trying to make conclusions about their students in the district. So the population is going to be all local high school students. And the sample is going to have a number generally, like how many you talked to. And so that would be the 231, and it should also be the same type of people that the population is talking about. So it would be 231 local high school students. Then the parameter would be information that was collected from the population, so you would have to have done a census, and it looks like we did not do a census, that we just talked to 231 of the local high school students. Really depends on how big your area is, but 231 does sound like a sample, not a population. The parameter, then, we didn't find any, and the statistic is the 58%. That's the sample statistic, because that's from the students that were surveyed, and we decided that survey had to be a sample, and since that's reporting exactly what the results of the survey were, then it has to be a statistic. So 58% eat high fat. You might want to pause the video and give this one a shot on your own, and then check on the next video and see how you did.